Hello world, welcome back to the PG.biz podcast with your hosts, me, Brian Baglow, and the ever wonderful Peggy and Salz. Hello Peggy, back from your travels I see.
Yes, I am. I was at MAU, so a week in Las Vegas. Not just all fun, of course, quite a lot of work, a lot of networking, and a lot of good vibe hearing about our podcast. We have people lining up now. We have inbound, Brian. We'll have to be choosy.
Oh, that's okay. Excellent. So we'll have to employ some people, I think, just to make sure that the quality stays
Just
high.
Yeah.
So let me just check. MAU, you're not saying meow like the cat. You're talking about
meow,
the acronym monthly average users?
It was monthly active users. Now I think it's mobile app unlocked. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's not entirely only about games, but games make up a great percentage of it. In fact, we're going to have her over here. I'm so excited. We're going to have Faith Price from Double Down Interactive because I did a great fireside with her all about soft launch.
Mm-hmm.
And she came out with the things that we need to hear. So some tough love there, right? About the timelines, learning to love an MVP that's still an MVP of an MVP. So you get it out the door, getting games out the door in 2 and 3 months and not 2 and 3 years. And some interesting stats, actually. I'll bring this one up because it left an impression, and that's something to be said because it was a, jet lag and everything, but I'm still thinking about it. So she does her homework. Faith is amazing. You'll see when we have her on the show, Brian. And she's telling me that Statista, so she looked at Statista numbers. So there it is. It's Statista. Yeah. That's the source. Take it or leave it. There's always a grain of salt everywhere. But before IDFA, roughly 2,800 games a month iOS released.
Yeah.
Post IDFA, 600 and tendency further downward.
Really?
That's a lot. That's a shift. Well, it makes sense because if you were launching a game, and this will come back to what you're saying and everyone's saying on our series as well, great games matter. So yes, games matter. And before there was a way to sort of like slide by and sort of play formulas and algorithms and figure it out with data. Well, if that data isn't there, user level data isn't there, and you don't have, you're not up for it, then you're just going to drop out. And I think that's what we've seen. We've just seen that sort of weeding out of games that are serious about being games and games that thought, hey, let's just launch and see what happens.
Yes. Crossing your fingers and hoping for the best was never a reliable business model, but I think we're seeing more and more studios recognizing that the making the thing is only the start of the whole process. But it's great to have you back. Thank you so much for that. And I'm looking forward to finding out more and talking to some of the amazing people. Yes. But of course, MAU was not the only show in town when it came to world-class mobile events. We have our very own Dave Bradley, who has joined us just fresh back from the shores of Seattle, where we held the last PGC event. Welcome home, Dave.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast. But yeah, I love Seattle. Seattle's an amazing place, but I'm jealous of your trip to Vegas, Peggy. I've never been to Vegas. I'm not even to CES, so I'll have to remedy that at some point.
I was clubbing this time, Dave. I have stories to tell.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, though, Peggy. That's Seattle. Seattle's a lovely place too. And while we were in Seattle for Pocket Gamer Connect Seattle, it had record high temperatures as well. It was incredible weather we were out there. I'm very, very grateful to be inside an air-conditioned conference hall. I can tell you, but it's very beautiful down there by the shores of the Pacific Northwest.
Why Seattle? Out of all the gaming hubs in North America, why did PGC end up in Seattle?
That's a great question. Seattle has an incredible indie scene. That's one of the big attractions for it. But it's also got some of the biggest companies in the world. If you think of Microsoft in Redmond, which is just across the sound from Seattle downtown. Nintendo of America is based in Seattle. So it's got this incredible mix of real kind of grassroots development talent in the indie scene, which is very well organized. Some great work being done there by the Seattle Indies group and the IDGA out there. But then also this hub of big companies. I mean, it's sometimes referred to, along with Vancouver, which is really not very far away at all, as the Silicon North as opposed to the Silicon Valley, and there's lots of companies there. So we were originally in San Francisco every year, actually. But we ran a few conferences in San Francisco, but San Francisco is already very well served for events. You can just think of GDC. We spoke after being in GDC in March. So in 2019, we thought, well, can we take this roadshow somewhere else, somewhere where there isn't already a big conference taking place, but there is a community of game developers that might benefit from us finding a venue and putting on a show. And we looked at Seattle, and that's where we came there. We realized that I took a trip to Seattle in 2019 and was made to feel incredibly welcome by the local indie community. And also the big companies opened their doors to me. I went and visited Nintendo of America, and I just came away thinking, well, there's a lot going on here, and there isn't a GDC locally. I mean, it has some great stuff. I mean, PAX is there, and there's plenty going on, but there isn't an equivalent of GDC. There isn't, that something. There hadn't been, I think, a Casual Connect had been there maybe in the past, but hadn't been there for a while. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring that community together, and they welcomed us with open arms. So we've been back every year since, pandemic notwithstanding.
What about the topics there? Because, when you think about something like GDC, that's already, as you said, very well served. Whereas we've got an indie community in Seattle, maybe they're not already so excited about Gen AI, and they're thinking about other topics that are more important to them. I mean, what was the mix of topics compared to the other ones, or even, PGC London for that matter?
That's a great question. I did a little research before coming here. I looked at the feedback we've received, the sort of exit poll that we'd done from people. 75% of attendees had never been to a Pocket Gamer Connects before, so we had a lot of new people coming along. And the most popular track for them was the indie track. So I think that speaks to the very vibrant indie community there. So in terms of the track topic mix, we did put an extra amount of effort into getting AI content there, because it seems to just be the hottest topic at the moment. We came away from GDC with everyone talking about it, so we wanted to make sure that was welcome there. But we had 2 stages. We had different tracks throughout the day. We had tracks focusing on the indie scene. We had the usual mix of monetization content. We had a bunch of stuff about Web3 and blockchain. Like I said, the feedback afterwards was that the indie track was the most popular. But there were a dozen tracks throughout the day with a slight emphasis on new technology. But the other interesting thing we did for the first time here in Seattle, which we'd never done when we were in San Francisco, is we ran a series of roundtables. So we put aside a room, we created a space where these were more than just panels. The audience were encouraged to participate right from the start. We put a few experts on every roundtable with a view to them being an open discussion forum. We didn't record those sessions either. So one of the things that we do at our events is we record the track room. So you can't be everywhere. You can only be in one room at a time. So you can go and watch the recordings later. But we said we're not going to record this room. This is people should feel free and not intimidated to express opinions and to speak up. Those roundtables went down very, very well. Lots of positive feedback for them. And the most popular one of those was about the layoffs that there's been in the games industry in America. So we had a big conversation about the state of employment in America, about the state of job seeking, and about the economic impact on the games industry. And that went down very well. We ran a recruitment fair in one of the other rooms there. Again, not something we've done at any of our Pocket Gamer Connects activities before. We got the feedback already from my last trip to Seattle that finding work was very much on people's minds. The fact that the games industry has seen its first ever slowdown in, I want to say 25 years, Brian, is that about right? But it certainly has a little, it's had a little bit of a blip. The economic climate generally globally, as you mentioned, talking about MAU as well there, Peggy, the fact that the number of games releases has slowed a little bit. People are finding user acquisition hard. There's been layoffs. There's the elephant in the room right from the start was that a lot of the big companies, including Microsoft and Amazon right there in the Seattle region, have made layoffs. So we had some open discussions around that, the round table. We had recruitment companies like GG Locators were there, and we ran a little recruitment fair, which I'm very gratified to say was supported by some big local companies. The Pokemon company, for instance, came out. They are currently recruiting, so they had a table there. We had companies like Very, Very Spaceship. We had, like I said, GG Locators were there. We had just I think maybe like a dozen companies came along that are actually recruiting. Big Fish are there. The Pixel Federation. They were there with Big Fish, and that went down very well. So the career zone, as we called it, was popular too. And I'm pleased that we did that, because I think it was an opportunity for people to come along and see that games industry companies are recruiting despite all the news of layoffs. So we were able to run that as well.
That's really very gratifying, particularly because you're giving back. And to your point, there's talent that's sort of I'll say unleashed. I'm going to be positive about that, right? It's available and up for grabs, and then being able to make that connection, because they are hiring. It was the same thing I saw in Mao. It was like every panel, and then, by the way, we're hiring. So they are, but it's just not getting out sort of the normal channels. It's not on every Slack channel. It's just not really readily available. And here we are. We have a community at pocketgamer.biz. So yes. And at Pocket Gamer overall. So it's great that you did that. Is it going to continue with the others? Because we've got more events coming up this year.
We have, and we like to tailor the event to the specific region. So we're not running a career zone in Dubai. Our next event is in Dubai in June. What we are doing there is tailoring the content around the specific interests and needs of the growing Middle East games development community. So there'll be lots about investment in the Middle East. There'll be lots about growing an ecosystem in the Middle East. There'll be lots about trying to unlock the potential of of studios that are being founded in the Middle East. So we're not running a career zone there, but I'll definitely look at running it again in other territories. I try to go ahead and check out a territory and see what the needs of that community are and what topics everyone's talking about, and create an event that works locally. I mean, there are some mainstays of all our events. We'll definitely be talking about the current state of user acquisition and monetization at all of our events, but just trying to finesse it for the local community is part of the challenge. And so we'll be looking at what works in Toronto, which is our July event after that.
See, I think that's one of the great strengths of the whole PGC calendar, is the fact that you can tailor and adapt the format to the community that you're around. And it's one of these odd things, despite the fact that games is such a huge globe-spanning industry, bigger than any other of the creative industries, screen, music, etc. It can be really tough to just understand what's going on out there. Despite the number of people playing games, reviewing games, writing about games, the actual industry topics, the kind of thing that we cover as our bread and butter on pg.biz is not always that widely known, even by people in the industry. So getting that opportunity to connect with people, make those direct sort of introductions, can be massively useful in bringing that sort of community together. So I'm thrilled, and I'm not just saying that because clearly I want to go to Seattle next time around.
Yeah, it's a great city. It's a very vibrant. Like I said, we were there in the middle of a heat wave, but even so, Unity have offices in the region. Epic have offices in the region. They're not the head offices, but they have big offices over the water in Bellevue. So there's a lot of talent there. I was able to visit the offices of a company called Shrapnel. Actually, I think the parent company might be called Neon Machine, but they're building heavily around a brand called Shrapnel, which is a first-person shooter loot extraction game with blockchain elements built in, and that's a newly founded company. With some incredible talent there, drawing from the region. They've got some ex-Microsoft employees there. They've got Mark McCurry, who was in charge of the Azure blockchain project for Microsoft. They've got some folk there who previously worked on HBO Max. HBO streaming services were actually built in the Seattle region as well. There's a lot of tech talent there. And so they've got some talent from there. And that was fascinating, just seeing them building a game. I think Shrapnel will be available to play later this year. So that was an interesting trip to their offices there. But there's just a real interesting mix of games industry talent there. And like you said, Brian, often people don't really know that. I mean, people think of Seattle and they think of Frasier and grunge, I think is probably what they think about Seattle.
That's pretty much my understanding.
Exactly. Or maybe Twin Peaks and Twilight. There's all the filming that goes on in the region as well. But actually an absolute hub of tech and games talent in the region.
Just curious, you say indie talent. Is it any particular genre or even monetization models? Is it a mecca for budding subscription games? I don't know. I'm just curious if there's something that characterizes what the opportunity there is as well.
Very diverse. Lots of different lots of creative talent, actually. Lots of artists, musicians. I have always tried to synchronize my trips to the region to line up with the monthly gathering that the Seattle Indies group have, and they go to a pub called Optimism Brewing. If anyone's in the region, they should call in there on a Tuesday, on the third Thursday of every month. And I try to coincide with that. You meet a lot of creative people there. It's a real mix. Lots of people who are indies now, but previously worked at the bigger companies, and also people who have recently graduated from one of the region's universities. DigiPen is there, for instance, a further education college specializing in games and the creative art, but there's also the University of Washington and so on. So lots of sort of people first of all, getting into the industry for the first time. I would say, if I had to kind of characterize it, probably there's more PC than there is mobile, because that's just a general trend everywhere at the moment. But also, I think lots of creative talent. A lot of people I meet are, by nature, artists, musicians, level designers, that kind of thing. We need a lot of people like that.
That's brilliant, Dave. And I want to pull you back to one of the topics that you mentioned earlier, which is the whole Web3, blockchain, NFT, and so on and so forth. What did you get a sense of out in Seattle? Because, we've discussed AI. We talked about that when you guys came back from GDC, and I think that was kind of the hot topic. But are we seeing any kind of movement on the whole Web3 gaming side of things? And is it acceptance, or are people still a little cynical?
Everywhere I'm seeing this year that there's more a kind of cautious acceptance of Web3. Now, I should say that that's not universal. The Seattle Indies group that I've just mentioned, that I'm a big fan of, do some fantastic work in the region. They threw a party on the second night of Pocket Gamer Connect Seattle, and like 150 people came along. Unity backed it. It was very interesting. But the Seattle Indies do not support NFTs or blockchain work. That's actually one of the areas where they're very open about not supporting that, and so you wouldn't expect to encounter people working in blockchain at a Seattle Indies event. And in fairness, they've been very good at supporting our event and promoting it, with the caveat that they've not been involved in any of the blockchain talks, I should say. However, we did have pretty much a whole day dedicated to Web3 and blockchain activity, and it was very popular. A number of speakers locally, and like I said, I'm seeing. We mentioned this when we spoke about GDC. Whereas a year ago, I'm seeing lots of kind of Web3 projects that were focused on the technology and the kind of crypto side of things. This year, I'm seeing much more people who are building games from a games background, and then are exploring what blockchain can bring to that, can add to that. And the Shrapnel game, like I said, that are based downtown in Seattle, are a perfect example of that. They're working with Unreal. They've got some veterans of the games industry building this incredible first-person shooter game that you don't have to ever know is involved in the blockchain. But there's an economy there. They've built a Web3 marketplace. There's going to be the skins and the insignia and the weapons that you can build, and the levels that you can design yourself are all going to be what was probably an NFT was probably the word that we'd use, but they're not using that word. They're talking about digital assets and digital ownership.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of that in there, and that's the kind of thing that I'm seeing. So yeah, we had a whole stage dedicated to Web3 stuff. It was very popular throughout. Some great speakers on it. Really interesting panel. And people, to your point, Brian, about people in past years pushing back against it. A lot more people asking curious questions. I was in a panel. I was hosting the stage, so I was kind of sitting back and watching the panel that was talking about bringing blockchain games to market. And there were some really good questions in the audience from indie developers in the audience asking, like, what actually does blockchain bring to games? But I think very much not in a challenging, what are you talking about? More in a, can someone please tell me? I've come to find out. I've come to learn. And that was very good. People being very open about what can be added to games with blockchain. So yeah, it was fascinating from that. And it's a hot topic. It's also a very hot topic in Dubai, by the way, getting lots of requests for Web3 content, for conversations around what it brings. I think for instance, Come To Us are going to be there. The big company, big in mobile previously, the creators and publishers of Summoners War and Korean company, but with a huge US presence. They're going to take part in Pocket Gamer Connects Dubai. They were at Pocket Gamer Connects Seattle. They've gone all in on Web3, and that's interesting to see. And how they're basically taking a blockchain first approach to the IP that they've been working with for years in other capacities as well. And I think that's very interesting to see, and it's interesting to hear the stories around that. And I think we'll see more of it. So we're bringing those guys out to Dubai as well to speak about it there.
It's always interesting to hear, how people are connecting with this, how they're engaging with this, because it's when you read the media, to go back to the games media, there does tend to be a polarization. And so, a lot of people have decided we're just not touching it, we're not covering it. But there do seem to be an awful lot more companies out there just getting on with things. And as you say, coming from a games background with a games sensibility and asking the honest question, okay, what can we do with this? Is it actually useful?
Yeah, exactly.
And also building sort of games first. It reminds me of Mystic Moose from GDC and some other interviews I did. They're going to be showing up on pocketgamer.biz soon, where it was basically, we'll just have it there. We won't talk about, to your point, Dave, there'll be indies or companies, they'll just be there. Not going to make a big deal about it, but it's there for an easy transition. But it was built game first, mechanics added, sort of like the Intel inside, and it will come when it comes. Maybe even rename it. I've heard a lot of people in the industry talk about how we need to rename quite a few terms. Play to earn is not cool, so others like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it. It's definitely had a bad image so far, and rightly so. There were some bad projects and some outright scammers involved in crypto from early on, but the solution to that, the solution to there being bad games using Web3 is to build good games that use Web3. So we're seeing people doing that now, I think.
Dave, you mentioned kind of shaking the format up and having these kind of roundtables, sort of a far more interactive element, which I think you said had a really good response. And I think it's not common to have those sorts of spaces at industry events where people can talk honestly and actually engage rather than just, sitting on your butt listening to somebody on stage. Is that something you think could be a regular feature of PG Connect's events moving forward?
I would love to have more of that. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. It bridges a gap between the two things that we do very nicely, which is we have some great content, some great speakers, some great panels, and we're also good at creating networking spaces. I think places where people can kind of hang out and they can talk and they can do business meetings. And the roundtables feel like a natural extension of both, of bringing together of that kind of very personal, that personal touch where people can speak openly about things, but also bringing experts to the room that can, that can be quizzed. Yeah, I like a good roundtable format. We did an event that wasn't a Pocket Gamer Connects. It was much more kind of boutique in scale. It was a leaders summit that we ran in Riyadh last year, and we actually had a roundtable, one of the first of our kind of roundtable discussions in the desert around a campfire, if you can believe that, which was a very atmospheric and a fantastic way to try out the format. That was the very first time I think we'd done it at one of our events, and however the timing managed to work out, we took it onto the sand dunes, and I got a very interesting conversation going with some folk about what was needed to kind of grow an ecosystem in a new territory, like the Middle East. And so it felt like a very appropriate place to do it, which is round this with just pulling up these chairs around a fire in the desert under the stars. I can't promise that at every single one of our events. I think in January in London it'll be a bit chillier than that. But maybe we should take it to a pub, Brian. Maybe that's what we should do in London. Maybe that's the London equivalent of that.
I suspect you might be blurring the lines between the round table and the fireside chat, Dave, but I'm absolutely up for that, whether it's a pub with a nice roaring fire or halfway up a hillside in the freezing cold and sleet. Should we ever come to Scotland, I'd be happy to suggest a hillside. But yeah, no. I think
you've got the. To turn this around, you've got the Scottish Games Week again this year, haven't you? Isn't that on the agenda?
I do. Finally, it all got a little bit shaky a couple of months back because the whole of Scottish politics caught fire, fell over, burned down, sank into the swamp. But outside that, yes, it seems to be getting a little bit more momentum, a little bit more traction this time around. So it will be coming up, and there's probably a chat that we need to have about that at some point very soon. And I might be stealing the taking people out into the desert idea.
Yeah, well, find an equivalent of that. Well, Scotland's such a beautiful country, and you've got some, amazing cities where your activity took place. But what a great opportunity to take some people to get them together and have the roundtable idea there. Yeah, absolutely, do it.
Okay.
Well, when is that, Brian?
It's the very end of October, so it's October the 30th to November the 3rd. in the three sort of main central belt cities, so Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Dundee at the moment, with additional, online satellite and fringe events, TBC.
You're taking place over Halloween, so there's obviously some kind of October the 31st activity to take place. I think I'm sure you're already thinking of that. That could be fun.
I haven't decided to make fancy dress mandatory yet, but I think and of course in Scotland we were carving vegetables to put candles in long before we ever got the pumpkin. So traditionally it was a turnip, and if you have ever been 7 years old and trying to carve a turnip with a dessert spoon, you know that we had to work hard for Halloween in this neck of the woods.
In a way, Dave, it gives also PG.biz another sort of remit, another sort of area, which is bringing these together. I mean, you can imagine companies looking for talent or recruiters or even people wanting to polish their personal brand a little bit. It's almost like going out dating again. When you have to look for a job, you have to get ready for it. So it's almost a bit more of I wouldn't say a side gig, but it certainly fits in really well. One is having the community and the other is cultivating the community.
You've just, I think you're absolutely right, and I want to speak to that, but you've just given me an idea. If someone doesn't have a recruitment app where you get to swipe right or left on companies or opportunity, then someone should build that straight away. There's a free idea for somebody there. There's your job seeker, app right there.
Tinder for business.
In fact, it should be job seeker with just the R on the end, not the ER. There you go. There's someone can go ahead and build that. And it is tough out there to find work, but going to conferences and events and festivals is absolutely a great way to do it. It's networking counts for a lot. I know, in a lot of industries, people say it's not what you know, it's who you know, and I don't think that's true. I think you do have to know your subject matter. You do have to know how to, you have to know your business. You won't get very far if you don't. However, it's all about the meeting people does come in with. That's how you find out about what jobs are available, what companies are starting up, where you get to know what's going on in the industry, what the trends are. And certainly, I think every job that I've heard of since I first joined the industry, I heard about it first from someone else before I saw the job ad, and that's the way to find out about things. And if events do have job fairs at them, the chance to go and meet people in person and get them to look at your CV. In fact, one of the things I like at conferences, and they do this a lot in American events as well, is as well as a recruitment fair in itself, even if there aren't vacancies on the table, things like portfolio reviews. There are many mentors out there in the industry that are very welcome to share their experience, to look at your art portfolio or your programming portfolio and give you instant feedback on your resume and so on. And getting an opportunity to do that is important. And so yeah, things like that are very, very valuable at events.
Fantastic. Okay. So Dave, you have mentioned Dubai coming up. You have mentioned where is it in June? July, sorry.
Toronto in July. Toronto. It's Dubai in June and Toronto in July. That's it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And then, we've got we're doing lots around here. We're going to be very busy. We've got I'm looking forward to Gamescom in August, which is not one of our events, but we always go. That's in Cologne. We will be running some activity alongside that. I don't think it's I don't think we've announced it, but I don't think it's any secret that we'll be running another one of our top 50 mobile game makers events there if we can, and we're looking at that at the moment. And then we'll be running an event in Helsinki in September. So we'll be looking forward to that. That'll be the 12th and 13th of September. And then obviously Scottish Games Week, and then into the last couple of months of the year, hopefully we'll be back in Jordan is the plan. So watch this space.
And of course, Gamescom in my backyard.
Of course, yeah, very good.
The studio will be done, and I was going to pull a couple people down in there for some interviews and do a couple podcasts directly from the studio. Last year, I unfortunately missed Hellsinger, which was the band for Gamescom. So I thought maybe see if the band will come over and do a couple things for us as well. You never know. Great people.
What this is looking like, Peggy. It looks like we might actually get to do one of these live and face to face at some point. Who knows?
Oh, love the idea. Yes. We'll get as close to that as we can. Definitely building it for that reason. So it'll happen. And I've already had people say, hey, I'm coming over, I'm coming down. So
great. That's really good. By the way, I should say, I love going to a good conference. I'm actually going to attend the Generative AI conference in London. So there's an AI summit taking place in London in June as well, and that's not one of ours, but I'm going to attend, and I'm hosting a fireside chat on stage with Guy Gaffney of Charisma, and I'm looking forward to having a chat with him about the latest.
They're wonderful.
I know
Mr.
Guy's
Gaffney.
been on this podcast, is what made me think of it. Yeah, absolutely. We'll be talking.
Guy,
he was wonderful.
Yeah, he's a great speaker on the subject. Well, he's a games industry veteran as well, but on what AI can do in an ethical way, but just to enhance the gaming experience, what they're doing at Charisma. I'm hoping to take that to the stage. Yeah, on the 15th of June in London. So that's another conference I'll be at.
So it just remains to say, Dave, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. So we look forward to having you back.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to chat with you both.
Not at all.
Thank you for having me.
We'll make it a
nice
regular thing. Yeah. And so after Dubai, after Toronto, we'll get you back. We'll talk a little more. We'll find out more about the finger on the pulse and the situation on the ground in those cities.
Great.
And we'll look forward to seeing you here at some point in the next several weeks.
Perfect. Thank you very much. How nice to see you. Thank you. I look forward to coming back.
This show is all about how to do your job better, how to make an amazing game, how to market it, and you have a say. So if you have a story or know someone we need to shine a light on, then we would love to hear from you.
We want to hear from you. We want to reflect the reality of the mobile games market in all its wonderful complexity and strangeness. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any feedback for us, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@pocketgamer.biz. You can find us on Twitter @PGBiz, and you can reach out to us through the pocketgamer.biz website. If you're interested in listening to all of our podcasts, you can find them at pocketgamer.biz/podcast, and we would love to hear your thoughts on future shows.
And we've got you covered on all the major platforms, so subscribe to the audio podcast, as Brian said. Look for us on YouTube. If you want to read it, hey, you can do that too, because we have a companion post for you as well on the pocketgamer.biz website.
Tune in again for the next edition of the pocketgamer.biz podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you in the near future. Until then, I'm Brian Baglow.
I'm Peggy Salz, and that's a wrap until next week.